So I have seen them skimming the ground, plowing into killdeer. Many times I've seen them take flickers off fence posts. I've seen them fly into flocks of cowbirds like a merlin, where it was indistinguishable from a merlin, except you knew it was a kestrel because you watched it fly off the pole and go after them. I have seen them chase doves and pound doves on the ground, take doves off the wire. I've seen them catch house sparrows, field sparrows, in ways that made it obvious, A, that it was experienced at doing it, and B, capable of doing it, and C, it was going to catch it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another fun-filled Falconry podcast brought to you by the Falconry Fund. Fund information found in this podcast, including how to donate, fund activities, podcast information, including disclaimers, and contact info can also be found on the website at www.falconryfund.org. And this episode largely covers one of the little guys, particularly the American Kestrel, and what they can bring to the sport, how much fun they can be, and also, unfortunately, how sad it can be to fly these little guys sometimes. I personally am not afraid to admit that I have a very large bias towards these little birds, and I've had a lot of fun flying a couple of kestrels in my short falconry career thus far. And that being said, I started off like many others by reading American Kestrels and Modern Falconry, and I still to this day credit that book for helping me along towards my American Kestrel success. And after reading that book and subsequently trapping my first kestrel, I was able to get in touch with Matt on Facebook, and he was nice enough to give me some of his time, give me some pointers, and just give me some general advice on things, and I'll be forever grateful personally to him for that. And over the past couple years, I had really hoped that I might get the opportunity to meet him face to face, talk shop, discuss some of the other aspects of falconry, and here we are. So without further ado, I give you all Matt Mullenix. 3, 2, 1. What's up, Matt?
Hey, John. Good to see you. Welcome to the Mullenix home.
Thank you for having me. For everybody that hasn't heard me, I'm John Munier, and I am here down in Baton Rouge with Matt Mullenix, and we're just going to talk about some random stuff, kestrels, and what were we talking about just a little bit ago? I think we kind of left off a conversation.
Well, we're talking about sort of disqualifiers for new falconers.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And what I feel like is a responsibility to sponsor someone, and where that responsibility ends, where their responsibility picks up, and
right,
and sort of all around the idea that this is a rare sport where you've got one citizen who's basically a gatekeeper to your entire sport, and how would you feel had somebody disqualified you based on their perceived impression about what kind of falconer you would be.
Yeah, that's right. No, I remember that now. Yeah, I think that obviously there's a lot of subjective views on that, and overall, just I think that what people look for in prospective apprentices and people that come looking for involvement in the sport, I think it varies from person to person, but go ahead and share just what kind of things do you look at whenever someone approaches you?
Well, I mean, the first great leap is to show up, and that almost never happens. So I was telling you about the sort of tiers of approach,
right?
And the first tier is maybe they were interested in falconry, and you ran into them at a party, and they say, hey, I've always wanted to do that. I can't believe that you do that. That's, everybody has that experience once a week. But that guy or gal, you probably never hear from again. You run into them again at another party next year. They say, oh yeah, I've been meaning to get back with you on that. And, another tier might be, look, I definitely want to go hunting with you. What are the dates? When can I, show up? And will you call me to go? And no, I will not call you. I will tell you that I'm hunting 4 days a week and you can show up at X. And anyway, several tiers down the line is the person who shows up. And if it's summertime, they show up in the porch and we, take a tour of the hawk and, they go through their little spiel, which they had set up, and that's always interesting to hear.
Sure.
How long have they been interested in it? Why haven't they picked it up? And
why did you call me?
Right.
Why
Like,
are
what
you
did you?
here?
Yeah. And at that point, I don't try to interrogate them so much as just let them speak, and because it's going to be self-evident pretty soon.
Sure.
Because the next tier, after showing up at the house or showing up, amazingly, if they show up to the field and they're not wearing shorts and flip-flops, and they actually go for a hunt, that's at that point you're talking to a pretty real person at that, if they're showing up to hunt with you. But even showing up at the house to kind of get the tour and look at your books, and that's pretty indicative. But it would not, I would say, be a surprise to have never hear from that person again too, which has also happened. So
sure,
at the end of the day, I wait for the Wildlife and Fisheries to call me and say, hey, look, so and so says that he has met with you and he is interested in taking his test next Tuesday. Are you really interested in sponsoring him? And at that point, I say, well, yes, if he's jumped through these hoops, and I guess this is the point of the conversation where, like, well, no, there was some hugely disqualifying factor with this person, and for me, it would be difficult to, like, I've got a pretty high bar for that, mainly because, so when I got out of school, my first job was working for the Florida Fish and Game, and in our office, the non-game office, was the one that permitted falconers, and so we were privy to really what happens on the regulatory end when you've got a bunch of people who are sort of gatekeepers to other people, and we had some instances where there were sort of a race issue or a gender issue. Where people were being blackballed for being the wrong race or the wrong gender, some sexual harassment. These are things that you think, well, people are terrible. Right. And we know people are going to be terrible, and people are always going to be terrible. But here's the thing. These terrible people will keep you from being a falconer. And we have this unique situation in this weird regulatory framework that we came up with as falconers, that you need a sponsor and that we force you to do this. Well, then that puts the onus on us as experienced falconers, as permitted falconers, to have a very high bar for disqualification, right, in my opinion.
And not drop the ball.
Drop the ball, right? And not disqualify people, even if you have personal biases, right? And we all do. You have to set your own bar higher. Because this is so the sort of regulatory rationale is the first reason why I try to set the bar pretty high for myself. And the second is that if you had seen me, at 14, when I was, presented to my prospective sponsor, it's a scenario that none of us would really want to, look back at and say, hey, look, that's, I can really tell that guy's going to be a great falconer. Right. And so we come in all shapes and sizes. We come at falconry, late in life or early in life. We come at falconry in personal circumstances of say, financial stability or education or marital status or living, status. And, where we live, do we live in a city? Is it disqualifying to live in a city? Well, it should be disqualifying if you live in the middle of a city and you never can go hawking. But that's a discussion that you can have with the prospective falconer and say, hey, look, how serious are you about this? Do you want to move? But that aside, I set the bar for disqualification high because you never know about other people. Who am I to judge what falconry might be for you? And it might save your life. And I don't say that lightly, because I think there isn't a falconer who has been through a full season and enjoyed it and had a bond with the hawk and learned something about themselves and have realized that they are a falconer. No matter what anybody says about me, I'm a falconer. Sure. And I cannot take that away from somebody. I can't take the potential for that away from somebody.
Right. And ultimately, you also have to remember that, you're a human being. You have your own faults. You have your own sets of quirks and everything too. Exactly. Judge yourself first before everybody else. And relationships like that work both ways. I know I told you this story where first time I went out with a group of guys that in our Southern Indiana crew that went hunting with, I wanted to test them a little bit just to see, just how judgmental or jerks they could be or whatever. It turns out, we're all a fun group of jerks, I guess. But, I showed up with motorcycle chaps and a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle beanie on and stuff just to see what the reaction would be. Because, I mean, I knew, obviously, knowing nothing, you go in, you're still trying to feel your way and stuff, what's kosher, what's not.
Right.
But obviously I knew that showing up and stuff like that would be, a little, obviously not, it wouldn't fly. I just want to see what the reaction would be, see how welcoming they'd still be. Because obviously a large part, at least, just from what I've seen, and a large part of your success in this sport is determined by who you learn from,
right.
who you get out with. If you're not going to have a good experience doing it, why do it? And if you're not going to have fun with the group of guys that you're going to be hunting with most of the time, part of the fun in this sport is the camaraderie and the relationships you form and stuff. And if those aren't going to be positive, and you can't have some fun with a group of guys and take themselves too seriously, or they're just elitist or whatever the case may be, what's the point?
Right.
You might as well just not even bother, because it's nobody wants to just sit there and be judged the whole time, or be treated like crap,
Right.
So
Right.
But I mean, I do agree with you though. I mean, for sure, it's I'm not very far removed, even just from my first year apprenticeship and stuff too, and I feel fortunate that the group of guys that I got in with initially were a good group of guys to learn from. They're willing to share their knowledge, and it's unfortunate when some people aren't willing to, or a little standoffish about sharing their knowledge and stuff. And I know that's one of the reasons I was appreciative the first time I contacted you about the first Kestrel I flew, and just getting some general opinions, or just general suggestions and stuff. I mean, it's refreshing whenever people that even wrote the book on a certain topic or whatever are willing to put that time out there to help people that aren't as experienced. And I think it's cool whenever people have the foresight to know that you never know what someone's going to turn into, or someone's
Right.
going to evolve into.
Right. And that jury is out a long time.
Sure.
Right. So, we everybody watches everybody in the sport, and everybody, I think, is somewhat judgmental, not only about themselves, but about their contemporaries. As you grow in the sport, you judge the people that you learned from. As you think you start to learn some of what they knew and what they were teaching you, and maybe you think you surpass it in some ways. You have this sort of constant lifetime experience of appraisal of everybody else in the sport, and I think that's natural. I think it's inevitable, because you spend a lot of time thinking about falconry. You spend a lot of time doing falconry. It's a sport where a lot of people, their own men, so to speak, and their own women, and they have built themselves to a considerable degree. Not to underestimate how much you learn from other people, or how important it is to have a group.
Sure.
But you do a lot of this on your own, and you do a lot of this by yourself, alone in the field, without anybody ever seeing it. And so you become your own judge. And I think that's another good reason to sort of pause and make sure that your own judgment of another person doesn't extend too far beyond how much they have judged themselves, or how much they have to grow. And so somebody calls, and it's almost certainly somebody I've never heard of, or had never met, or not even a Facebook friend, or they say, hey, look, this is so and so. I live in this state. I've got your book. I have a Kestrel. I'm doing pretty well with it, or I'm doing terrible with it, or you never know. Like I would sit there and wait and hear what the story is.
Right.
And it's, I find those stories fall in 2 or 3 different buckets generally, but you don't know what you're going to hear until you hear it. And this is a sport, and so flying Kestrels, I think, is a good example of this. It's not rocket science, but it is a science.
Sure.
And if you get the right ones, and you kind of know what you're doing going into it, then you can succeed. Mm-hmm. And so this is one where even if you're failing, and I now sort of extend this to all calls I would get. I mean, I have a pretty high threshold here too. Like you got to be sucking pretty bad, because if you've made a call, if you've reached out to another falconer to say, hey, look, I need help.
There's a lot of egos in this sport.
There's a lot of egos in the sport. We have all screwed up, not only more than we wanted to, which was once. Or nonce.
Right.
But we have screwed up more than we have told anybody. We have screwed up more than we have written about. We have screwed up more than, we would want anybody to know.
Sure.
And so everybody, sort of carries that with them, and you have to carry that with you when you talk to another falconer. My feeling about this is not, stemming from some wellspring of good faith in people. I mean, I've met some people who turned out to be terrible falconers, who turned out to be terrible people.
Sure.
And that happens. But I think the sport does not attract terrible people in general. The sport attracts interesting people who have their eyes open, who are interested in wildlife and being outdoors.
It takes a unique group of personalities to want to do this to themselves.
Right.
I mean, to be willing to take on the unique challenges and responsibilities that come with these type of birds. And for the most part, yeah, I 100% agree. It's a definitely an interesting group of people. We are a very unique demographic.
Yeah, and it's funny when you go to a field meet, a NAFA meet, for example, and this has changed over the years. The first meet I went to was almost all men in their middle age, and the lights were off. It was it looked more like a drug convention than than a sportsman's convention. Now any year you go, it seems almost 50-50 male and female. It's a lot of young people. It's much more vibrant. The lights are generally on. The venues are better, and it's a much more sort of diverse experience. But even back in the day, you could not have looked at any one person and really known until you talked to them what their background was, where they came from, what job they had, if any. And we all sort of come from all walks of life. The one unifying feature being with this sort of fascination and as Bodio says, rage for falcons.
Yeah, affliction.
Right.
Affliction. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really hard to explain to someone that doesn't do it and doesn't understand. But generally speaking, even someone that even doesn't have any interest in the sport or getting into it or whatever, if they actually give a little bit of time to it, come and check it out and stuff, they at least get it a little bit.
I think that's valuable. And this is something that I've sort of grown in my opinion about this over the years. There was a time, in the first 7 to 10 years of my practice where I knew everything about falconry and could tell you everything that I know. I was pretty sure that nobody should get in that would ever get out. Right. That by definition, if you released your first red tail and you never got another one, you should not have been a falconer. And I am totally wrong about that. I was wrong then. I think anybody who believes that's wrong now. I think if you have subjected yourself to this discipline, if you have subjected yourself to an opportunity where you had to learn something, where you had to, be polite to a bird, where you had to put yourself in a subordinate position, where you had to, just get out of your own head, fix your schedule, do something different, and have a hands-on experience with wildlife, which is super rare, today. So it used to be not so rare, right?
Those relationships typically don't exist.
They typically do not exist, and we have this wonderful format that we can exploit to have that experience, which I think is by itself important and by itself ennobling. And if it only extends to a season or two and the person, releases a bird and says, hey, or loses the bird, says, they're just not for me, that person is changed. Yeah. That person will never be the same. That person will always have trained a hawk. And that's a special thing.
Well, and even the people that think they might be interested, but then see it and then realize that there's no way they can meet those requirements. Or even a step further, people that don't even like hawks. I mean, I've heard stories of guys that back in the day would just love to shoot red tails. They just get rid of them. They're a nuisance, whatever. anytime they'd see one, they'd shoot one. Well, they hook up with a falconer. They see him hunt, and all of a sudden they have a newfound respect, and I'll never shoot one of those ever again. You know, it's interesting how quickly this sport in general can change the minds of so many people if they're willing. You know, if they're willing to be open-minded and check it out. And I mean, to even just check it out, there's still a lot of hoops to even jump through, and a lot of people are turned off by just the entry-level amount of work and everything. But for the people that, you know, I do agree wholeheartedly. You know, for anybody that's even just willing to take that tiny step forward, there's very few people that aren't at least, I don't know, they haven't at least found some kind of new appreciation for something, you know, regarding nature or wildlife. And so all that being said, just to kind of wrap up that final thought, what's if there was just one simple thing for all the prospective apprentices or, you know, people thinking about getting into it? I mean, coming from your one point of view, I mean, just if there's just one thing more important than any others telling somebody that wants to get into it, what would you tell them? Well,
usually the main stopping point is time availability, and you know, and as a falconer, you know it doesn't take a lot of time, but it takes a regular application of a small amount of time, which means that you can't work till 5 during the hunting season. You have to figure out some other way to do that. So there's time availability, which if a person's locked into a type of job that they cannot change or will not change or is not going to, you know, be changed for them in the near future, that's a big stumbling block. The next one is related to it, and that's where do you go? And if you like, so this is where a prospective falconer and I would talk a little bit about, you know, how, you know, do you hunt? What do you hunt? Where do you hunt? You know, who do you know that has hunting land? Are you willing to you know, park at the 7-Eleven and hunt the empty lot right next to the 7-Eleven? Like, are you aware of where you would go? And then I make it clear to them that you need a dozen places, you need 15 places, 20, 25 places where you could go at a moment's notice and just show up without telling anybody, and park and then go hunt. And you need to do that 3 or 4 days a week at a minimum. And the sun has to be up. Right. I mean, you can go in the evening, but you have to be able to see.
I mean, there's guys that I hunt with regularly and know that are able to make pretty successful birds by mainly doing it on the weekends and stuff like that. But the thing is, though, is whenever it's time for them to do it, like that's all that it is. And you know, I mean, initially, I do agree, though, if for someone that's just getting in and stuff, they at least need to realize that is the time equipment, it's the time commitment they should be expected to do and strive for. You know,
well,
sure.
So right. So, to your point, there's certainly a way to practice falconry that can be done on the weekends and successfully. So I fly a male harris hawk, and I can fly 1 day a week. I can fly 2 days a month.
Sure.
And catch as many, you know, as I would on a regular hunt, hunting 4 days a week, probably. But this is after 35 years, and knowing this place where we live, Baton Rouge, very well, and knowing how far I have to drive and where I have to go and what the habitat looks like and what kind of quarry. Yeah. If I'm a new falconer starting out, and I had an apprentice this last year, I would challenge you a little bit on that. I don't think it would have been possible to just have him go on a weekend and get enough hours in, to figure it out.
And I agree. I should add the caveat to that you know, a lot of those guys are more experienced. They know how to get the most, you know, juice out of the squeeze, so to speak. Right.
And I'm not, you know, making a value judgment about what's the right amount of time, you know, to be a good falconer. Like this is, although, you know, at that point in my life when I was telling everybody their own business, I was telling people, you know, oh, you should definitely hunt every day. Cause guess what? I was hunting every day. Right. I had no wife, no kids. I was either in school or I had a job where I, you know, like the 4 other falconers in my office, we all brought our hawks to work and left right after. So,
yeah, and unfortunately, not everybody has jobs where they can bring their birds to work.
That's right. That's right.
But no, I mean, and that's why I wanted to start off this conversation with this line of thought, because, you know, everybody's expectations and everybody's views of what they, especially a sponsor to an apprentice, what their expectations were and what their requirements are of someone mainly to be willing to even sacrifice their own time and giving up their own time away from everything that they do. It's all different. I mean, from person to person. Hey everyone, hope you've been enjoying listening to another episode of the Falconry Fund podcast. Just as a reminder, the Falconry Fund is an organization that's dedicated to preserving and protecting the art of falconry in North America and abroad, and any contribution that you make to the Falconry Fund will further preserve and continue the tradition and legacy of the sport for those individuals, both past, present, and future, that have dedicated themselves to its lifestyle and practice, as well as bringing you future content. The other cool thing about the Falconry Fund is it's a nonprofit corporation under the IRS, so any contribution that you make is also deductible towards your taxes. So, if you have any other questions regarding the deductibility of your contribution or the tax-exempt purpose of the Falconry Fund, please contact its president, Alan K. Ayers, CPA, at 410-310-2733. Thank you. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast, and if you did, I know you're going to love the second half because we get into a couple of juicy topics here, one of which includes one of the more age-old controversial debates in falconry, particularly regarding kestrels. So, all that being said, let's jump right back into it. It's just amazing how many different views, points of view that everybody has, expectations, standards. And, kind of branching from that, I mean, I guess this would be a good time to just ask the question, why kestrels? What got you hooked on kestrels to begin with? What inspired you, or what motivated you to write a book about the subject, and what was the why?
Well, I mean, so you know from your experience how great kestrels are. And so there's a... there's a little bit of circular reasoning there, whether you get into them because they're great. But there's a point in your falconry career where you don't know that. And that point for me was fairly early. So although I live in Baton Rouge now, I have been coming to Southeast Louisiana since I was an apprentice, a teenager, coming from Georgia with my sponsor who knew some falconers here. And the first field meet I came to, so I was 15 or 16 years old, there were several kestrels there at the field meet, and these guys are no-nonsense falconers down here. And if anybody knows any reputation of anybody from South Louisiana, then they know. They go out. They expect to kill stuff. They kill a lot of stuff over a weekend. We would have field meets where we'd catch 50 rabbits and 25 squirrels, and this has been a fairly small area, like between 3 or 4 streets, literally. So these guys were not given to messing around or playing with hawks that didn't hunt. And here they were with kestrels. And as I wrote about in the opening of the book, that literally happened. I overheard them speaking, well, what the kestrel catch today? And thinking it must be a joke. There really is no answer to that question that is not, that doesn't end in a joke.
Right.
And it was like 2 starlings and a grackle or something. I mean, it was a real deal. It was multiple birds. And then of course you go out with somebody and you see, and the method at that point, we're all familiar with now is flying starlings out the window. Super successful kestrel, American Kestrel, very good at it, being, an ambush predator and smart and tough and gutsy. Knowing a good thing when it sees it. Is this a part where we should chime in and say, check your local state's rules and regulations? Yes, right. So we're talking about starlings, which are introduced species, and you're generally not prohibited to be attacked by any means,
along with house sparrows.
Yes, along with house sparrows, and on private properties.
Yes,
where you have permission.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So all of that
we covered that.
Right. All of that being true. Then the appeal of a kestrel, which, I mean, they're naturally appealing birds. I think anybody who doesn't like the idea of a kestrel, right? And
they're beautiful.
It's got something wrong with them. They're beautiful.
Beautiful birds.
Once you get to know them, of course, they've got great little personalities, and they're although it's probably not PC to say, they are the easiest of the small hawks to keep, to hunt with, to fly, to maintain, to feed. They're the red tail of the small hawks. Mm-hmm. So even a well sort of, and at this point I was experienced Harris hawker, red tail person, would catch game regularly. I had the sort of basics of, mechanics. I needed a lot of instruction on small hawk management, and I got that from Tom and Jen. At the time, they were breeding kestrels, and they had
Tom and Jen Colson.
Tom and Jen Colson. They were then in New Orleans. They're in Pearl River now, a nearby city in Louisiana. But they were breeding kestrels at the time, and my first kestrel was actually a captive bred kestrel from them, and I think my second one too. And I will admit I did not break any records with the first one. A little male. I think I caught 17 sparrows with it, but it screamed, which was not if you've tried to hunt with the screaming kestrel, you can see why it's not terribly successful.
Anytime you're just in the same room in general with a screaming kestrel,
or a screaming hawk of any.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But kestrels, they have this. They're definitely a little bit more high pitched and just a little bit more relentless than some. Fingernails on the chalkboard level. It's terrible. Anyway,
but the second one also captive bred, and I have to say I don't really recommend that you go this route. And I would not recommend an IS to anybody. I would recommend a passage bird to everybody, and would come to that conclusion eventually myself in my own practice of falconry. But
so not to interrupt, but just while you just mentioned that, just go ahead and just expound on that just a little bit further, because that's the biggest debate that I always see.
Right.
And I have the same debate with people too, and it is what it is.
I get that, and here's how I deconstruct the theory. The theory is kestrels are not supposed to catch game. We don't really believe that they're an actual real hawk, and so it makes sense that you need an IS, right? Because you have to wed it to birds, right? Because otherwise it would eat bugs and worms. And let me tell you, there's not a kestrel on the planet that would not eat bugs and worms.
Seen it many times.
You have caught a starling and then caught a bug, and then caught 2 starlings and caught a worm.
Yep.
It's just like a harris hawk. You'll catch 3 rabbits and a cotton rat, and it'll catch every cotton rat every time. And so kestrels are no different. Are sort of traditional, and I think this is changing a lot. I think this is, largely has changed now, is different now than it was when I was starting. The expectation now is that they hunt. But there's still this lingering concept of, you have to wed it to something. And this is, I think, without any basis at all in actual fact. And it turns out that the fastest way to catch is to get a passage bird, which has, by the time you have it, probably already killed several, or probably knows how to kill birds. And if it doesn't know how to kill a bird, it has been hungry before,
right?
And has had to feed itself in one way
Exactly.
or another, and has learned that, hey, look, you give me an easy slip, I'm going to go for it.
Opportunistic to the max,
right? And this sort of basic idea that it has fed itself, right? Like it has never looked to a person to feed it, and so it's already naturally outwardly looking. And of course, a lot of them, I believe, regularly catch birds by the time you get them. A haggard bird, which is legal. Everything we know about why you shouldn't take haggard birds probably applies to kestrels also, philosophically. The fact that they're difficult to determine whether it's a haggard or a passage bird plays into it. I would say that there is not a haggard kestrel out there that is not an expert bird hawk. They are, and when I say that, realizing that immediately puts it into the, comparison of sharp-shinned hawk, Merlin, Cooper's hawk. You say it's an expert bird hawk, right? Then it's a pretty high bar to meet.
You probably just caused a few people to swerve off the road and into an embankment.
Right, spit their coffee out. And let me explain what that means, and that would be in the context of a haggard kestrel of either sex, but let's say a haggard female. And then I'll tell you what I have seen. So I have seen them skimming the ground, plowing into killdeer. Many times I've seen them take flickers off fence posts. I've seen them fly into flocks of cowbirds like a merlin, where it was indistinguishable from a merlin, except you knew it was a kestrel because you watched it fly off the pole and go after them.
Right.
I have seen them chase doves and pound doves on the ground, take doves off the wire. I've seen them catch house sparrows, field sparrows, in ways that made it obvious, A, that it was experienced at doing it, and B, capable of doing it, and C, it was going to catch it. Right. So
it was determined.
It was determined to catch it. And that has a look that is unmistakable.
Yeah, it's confidence.
It's confidence, and it's it's a predator doing its thing. So and I'm not like the first to observe that. That's in North American Falconry and hunting hawks. I mean, that's way back when their expectation of a trained kestrel was basically zero. Mm-hmm. You had the authors saying, hey, look, the wild kestrels, well, they do catch birds, and they catch birds larger than themselves. And so something is happening. And all I needed to see was to know that an actual real falconer, somebody I might admire and want to be like, was not, kidding when they said they had a kestrel that caught game. And so at any rate, as it happened, my second one, captive bred female, Sally, caught lots and lots of birds. And she was the one that really gave me my first taste of what they can do. And this was not all car hawking. This is, flying big flocks of blackbirds. Mm-hmm. This is, we used to have a place I was in Valdosta, Georgia at the time when I had her. And we would go to a mall in the evenings when the birds were coming in to roost. And I would release her from the car in the parking lot, and she would fly in the opposite direction. She would fly over the roof of the mall and disappear at full speed.
Wow.
And then you give her like 4 or 5 beats, she'd come from the opposite direction of the trees and just explode into the trees and pull one out of the tree or pull one out of the air as it was coming down.
Wow. That'd be crazy.
And this is an IS bird, a captive bred bird. I got her as hard penned and already raised, so it was basically like training a passage hawk. But she had no experience except the experience that she got with me, which was a lot. And she showed me a lot. But the next leap is to trap a passage bird, and then you realize, well, all of the learning curve that you had to go through with that hawk, you don't go through with the passage bird. And they just like on day one, you get their weight right, and it's it comes to you when you call it. You could slip it on something and it would chase.
Not to mention all the work that's involved with the 24/7 care of an IS and the feeding.
Right, and you don't get that. You don't. Yeah. That's not a return on investment that you get back.
No.
Not in with Kestrel. Maybe So there's a great argument to be made for a sharpshin hawk, for an IS sharpshin hawk. That I think is clear.
Sure.
It's a benefit from a falconry standpoint. It is zero benefit with a kestrel from a falconry standpoint. Zero. Yeah. And in fact, it's a detriment. And so I'm unambiguous about that question. There's no doubt in my mind that you should not pull a kestrel out of the nest because not because it's immoral, but it's just not good falconry. There's just no reason for it.
Well, the biggest analogy, and granted, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I've flown 100 kestrels because I haven't.
Me neither.
But but I also don't need to see somebody stick their hand on a stove and burn the crap out of their hand to know that I probably shouldn't do that either, but I've seen enough guys and, fly ISs and stuff that have the same opinion. And, I mean, that's not to say they wouldn't necessarily do an IS again necessarily or whatever, but they all kind of come to the same consensus that there's very little that you can do, if anything, that you can do with an imprint that you can't do with a passage bird.
And let me say, so Jennifer Colson, who was my sort of kestrel mentor first, had an imprinted IS kestrel at the time that was a great car hawk and caught lots of birds. And Jennifer actually makes an argument for some, and I think her argument goes something like, it has no preconceived notions about what might be a good way to hunt. And therefore, if you have some situation that maybe a passage bird had never experienced, or might be, for example, one of the places that they used to hunt was had tall trees around it, and passage birds generally don't like to fly around a hard wood edge because they get eaten by Cooper's hawks.
Right. Yeah. Perfect.
But an IS, who may not have had that experience, might, and you had that spot, and you knew that was going to be a good spot. So I think there are arguments to be made, but on general principle, there's just no advantage to it.
Well, and then, going back to that specific point too, the double-edged sword there is the imprint also doesn't have the predator awareness. So if it doesn't really know that it even should be looking out for something that's going to eat it potentially.
I think they do figure that out in time. And I think There's right. I
mean,
there
too
isn't
late by that time, but
there isn't a Cooper's hawk that can't catch a kestrel.
Oh, sure.
Either.
Yeah,
So, and it is. I can tell you, as a matter of fact, it is no protection from Cooper's hawks that you're a passage or a haggard kestrel. And so I've had 2 personal experiences where coops have come in. One took it off the fist, basically.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah. And one took it as it was coming back to the car. In both cases, and I think in your case too. And I tell everybody the same thing. I just
no more than an inch away from my hand.
You run after them though, yelling and screaming, because Cooper's hawk will drop.
Oh, I got him to drop.
Right.
Yeah.
And and I've talked to several people that have had exactly the same, which is sort of a weird thing to know. But
well, I mean, and I've known guys that use air horns and stuff too.
Right.
It just. The key is, though, I mean, nothing else. You just kind of hope that coop is also a male, too, that can't get up and away, as fast as maybe a female could, with it because of the weight and everything else.
Right.
The one that swooped in and got mine, fortunately, was a male. He wasn't quite big enough to get the air and get off the ground super quick and everything, so I was able to actually catch up, run, and catch up not too far behind, and, which helped with the yelling and screaming like a madman.
Right. I mean, that's one. If a Harris hawk catches a kestrel, there's no yelling and screaming.
It's gonna go up and stare at you while it plucks all the feathers off.
Right. So, well, I mean, the other thing about a Cooper's hawk too, and anybody who's flown a Cooper's hawk knows this. They when they catch something, they just stand on it, and it's perfectly alive. Typically, they pluck them naked before they even break in. And so and I've got a pretty, macabre story about this. We were trapping merlins in Florida on the beach, and we, when you're trapping merlins, of course, you're trapping during migration. So there's Cooper's hawks and kestrels and harriers and everything else going over too. And and we had this horrific experience of watching a coop catch a kestrel and spiral down out of the sky with it and land in the palmettos where we could not reach them. And, I guess you could argue you shouldn't. It's happening in nature, and that's what happens. But we were close enough. We had to listen to that kestrel scream for about an hour and a half.
And that it is a heartbreaking little trill too, man.
Yep. It's you hear it once and you know what's going on.
Yep.
And that kestrel, I guarantee you, was plucked naked before bite one from that Cooper's hawk, and you could have walked in at any time. Again, we physically could not get there, or we probably all would have, but. At any rate, illustrates terrible things happen to kestrels around Cooper's hawks.
Well, unfortunately, with the way things work in the world, if you're smaller than everything else, typically you get eaten more.
You get eaten by the next big guy.
Yep. That's true. Well, cool. I mean, thanks for sharing your viewpoint on that, because if there is people that are just starting to get interested in kestrels, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, probably, but that's the biggest. That's usually the first question that's asked on a Facebook page or a group or a forum or whatever is, all right, thoughts of imprint versus passage versus hag, go.
Right.
And next thing you know, you're 236 comments later. Right. And, there's this big debate and stuff. And, I mean, I've seen amazing kestrels, both, I mean, and the only thing that I've noticed that, obviously an imprint may, right off the bat after you enter it and stuff, may be prone to take a little bit bigger game, maybe a little quicker.
I'm not sure. I don't know. That's true. I mean, they can catch grackles, boat-tailed grackles. Yeah. And these are, like relatively giant. It's basically a broad-winged hawk on a jackrabbit. And they do that handily, and I'm not sure that an IS is that much more eager to go after it than anything else. I mean, a passage bird that expects to kill a starling will go bind to stuff.
Like I said, I've seen both ways as well, but I mean, that is the one thing just in my personal experience so far. Well, you may not even want them to go after, but
then you got to like a scenario with a young Harris hawk where. You spend the first 3 weeks in the field trying to keep it from, catching every coyote and dog and horse and whatever else just because it thinks it can.
Yeah.
So I grant you there's some of that. But
once again, it's well established that a passage kestrel can also catch a grackle if it really wants to.
Right. And you can let it go.
Right.
Right. Yep. And it's so it's I think there's as a practical matter it's a pretty settled issue for me. I think it's telling that generally that thread in the and the internet starts sometime around April.
Yeah.
when they have released their last bird and they're looking at doldrums over the course, they're like, and they know where a nest box is, and they're like, I think I could really get one started. And I'm like, well, no doubt you could, but then you'd be stuck with it.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
I mean,
thanks for sharing that. I didn't mean to digress too far on that topic, but do you even remember what we were talking about a minute ago before I told you to expound or asked you to expound?
Well, we were talking about what interested me in kestrels.
That's right.
And getting into it.
Yep.
But just to finish that story, went on from Sally, who I lost, who a bunch of crows chased her off. And I've never flown with telemetry. Was not even really a technically possible option when I was flying. Mostly, it is now, and I know people who have done it, and I don't. I certainly would not dissuade you from flying with the telemetry if you could, but I didn't and hadn't, and lost her with a bunch of crows chasing her off, which anybody who flies a kestrel knows that could happen any day. And so, but then I had a series of passage and haggard birds that were all because I knew better how to fly them and knew better what the hunting looked like. Were sort of progressively better and better birds, and so what I ended up thinking of having done myself is a sort of fellowship, so about 10 years I flew kestrels every year. And we tried to fly them every different way we could. We flew them at flocks of stuff. We flew them at, roosting sparrows. We flew them over dogs. We flew them in a cast. We flew, we flew every type of quarry we thought they could catch. We would travel with them, try them in different areas. And basically just treated them like your best falconry bird, which they stand up to, and can be, and can be sufficient for a falconer just to have a kestrel and catch over 100 head a season, no problem. Sure, have a great time. Not have it die. Not have really any serious problem with its weight control or husbandry, and so that actually puts it in a realm of practical falconry bird that's red-tailed hawk, Harris hawk, peregrine falcon. I mean, there's some heavy hitters in this group of birds that are great hunters, B, thrive in captivity, and C, are partners with you, meet you halfway at your sport.
It's hard to find another type of falconry bird that is such a good all-around combination of manageability, potential skill level, and just overall just easy to take care of in general. It can basically become another aspect of your house furniture.
Right.
It can become as close to that aspect of things as you would really care to let it in falconry. But with all the experience that you've had, and obviously then with it, what by far has been your favorite way to hunt them? Then is it still mainly just the typical way, or just
my favorite way would be on house sparrows. Yeah. And I'll cite you an area, a specific place that we had to hunt that I wouldn't say is rare. It would be rare here in Baton Rouge. We actually don't have big flocks of house sparrows here in Baton Rouge, and a lot of parts of the country where we assume you have big flocks of house sparrows, you don't. But where I was living in North Florida, we would actually travel about an hour and a half to get to one spot to hunt house sparrows with a kestrels. And it sounds crazy, except this spot was fantastic. And it was in the middle of an old World War II airfield. And so you drove into it, and we would fly the Merlins. We had Merlins with us too. We fly them on the airfield. And then in the middle of the airfield was a peanut packing factory. And the peanut packing factory, which had, it was like in the lawn, just hundreds and hundreds of acres of open lawn around this peanut packing factory that had shrubbery all around it. And so it had this tremendous native, it
was absolutely
loaded with house sparrows, and they wouldn't leave. And so it was really this perfect storm of hawkability for house sparrows and kestrels. And you'd get out of the car, you'd throw the kestrel up on the roof, you start walking, and you hit the bushes as you're going down, and dozens and dozens of sparrows come out, and they don't take off for the hills. They go around the corner and pile back in.
They just come right back in, yeah.
Right. And so house sparrows are great flyers, and house sparrows will not always put in. If there's a kestrel behind them, they'll sky out because they can sometimes outfly a kestrel. They're pretty well matched, American kestrel and house sparrow. And just like all hawks, to be successful, the hawk has to have a little bit of an advantage. It's either coming from a high position, or it's got a close slip, or it's, there is some advantage. Even with a hawk that's faster than the quarry, you still need, on average for 100 kills, most of those kills happen with some advantage to the hawk.
Well, sure.
Right. So
definitely.
So this was a place where the sparrows had to put back in, and that makes them a great quarry. And any, bird that gets up and puts back in is the kind of quarry that you want to hunt with a hawk. And so, while I will say this, we would drive around the airfield to hunt out the window and catch 2 or 3 starlings, and then we would stop in at the peanut plant and spend the rest of the afternoon hunting house sparrows. And they're very good at that. And it's just as engaging and as fun and as successful as hawking rabbits with a red tail. I mean, it was the same experience.
If I don't have to worry about filling the freezer, especially next time around, I really think the next time I fly a Kestrel, I really want to try and do something more like that. As I've told you before, is the only problem I've had is obviously it's just you get a passage or even a hag or whatever. So breaking them of the whole carrying thing,
well, you got to do anti-carrying training.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. It's tough. I know. And it's just, and that's the thing is I really haven't hunted that way before, so I haven't really tried to enforce the anti-carrying, methods before. That being said, the next go around, if I do decide to go that route, it's going to be kind of it might be some cool uncharted territory, because it would be something new that I really haven't tried to, really enforce or really train. But that seems like a blast, especially if there's a bunch of them in, like the pallet method and everything else that you discuss in your book and everything. I don't want to just, bomb starlings all the time.
Right.
As much fun as that is.
It's something in their toolkit that you cannot afford to not take advantage of when it's convenient.
Right.
They are really good at it. It's really practical. It's there's a lot of good reasons to do that.
Sure.
But it should be, known and excited. People should be excited about the prospect that that's not all you have to do. I would say that almost for every other hawk, car hawking should be at some point in your career, sort of sport of last resort. But I don't say that about Kestrels, though, because Kestrels really are sort of uniquely good at it, and the fact that you are dealing with the sort of more physically limited. It is not a Merlin. Kestrel is not a Merlin. It's not a sharp-shinned hawk.
Not a fast bird.
It's not a especially fast bird. For all their guts and for the fact that they that they can fly, it is not a sharp-shinned hawk.
Right.
And so you really can't afford to just drop off something hugely successful that they can do. Yeah. But on house sparrows, that is a real deal hawking, and it's a lot of fun. And the anti-carrying, I can tell you, is not that big a deal.
Oh, I'm sure it's not. It's just something that I've
well, that's another thing that everybody talks about and everybody's afraid of, but very few people have actually gone ahead and tried to do it over multiple birds, and they're like, oh, you know what? I can tell you, some kestrels and some hawks of every type are going to carry. Sure. And you're not going to stop them from doing that. But
typically, whenever they're not quite as hungry.
Well, there's that's true too. Yeah. But then there's some that you couldn't carry if you ran up to them. Sure. And then there's, of course, training them to not carry when you run up to them, which is exactly what you do. Right. And so that method is, again, Tom and Jen taught me how to do that. They would typically fly their Merlins, which they flew for years and years. And Merlins are well known to carry. In their case, they're going off to cache it and come back and hunt with you. But it can be tricky to try to take anything from them. Mm-hmm. But Tom and Jen flew Merlins for years. It would just let you run up on them and scoop them up off the ground. And they did that by running up on them and scooping them up off the ground a bunch of times in training, which is similar to what you do with the kestrel. So,
what have been your other your favorite types of birds to fly, and which will you never do again? And I mean, what's
I can answer both those questions pretty easily. So I have flown quite a few kestrels and spent some years, sort of dedicating myself to that. But around that have been a lot of Harris hawks. I've had odds and ends of weird stuff. Like I've flown several broad-winged hawks, and had one that I flew out the car window that caught 40 birds. Met my minimum standard of having flown that particular hawk. Raised some red-shouldered hawks. I've had and lost quickly a couple of merlins. Flew a Cooper's hawk that flew well until it died in December of the year. But it caught 122 head before. But that was before trying to do the same thing with a male Harris hawk. And so now I'm a huge advocate and evangelist for the male Harris hawk in falconry, which should surprise nobody. It's one of the most successful birds in the world.
Versatile.
So, it is the most versatile male Harris hawk, and I'll go toe to toe with anybody, and I love it. I know it's a Reddit.
It's a bone of contention. It's a bone of contention.
What is the most,
especially those Goshawk guys?
Yeah, of course, those guys, right? Yeah. So we'll have a. We can look at the data. We can go hunting on any given day in any given field. But my feeling is that whether or not it is the most versatile bird, it is plenty versatile to the extent that you catch sparrow, swamp rabbit, sparrow, jackrabbit, starling, sparrow, blackbird, all in a hunt, and one after the other, and so it's a matter of what do you want to hunt? What do you like to hunt? You've got a partner with you that will do that. So I would say that now I've had probably more male Harris hawks and more kestrels than anything else combined. Red tails, of course, which I love, and like a passage red tail is a fantastic crusher. And a great bird in its own right.
The reason why everybody gets started off on it for the most part,
right? And a lot of people come back to them. And sure. I think just like a kestrel, there's a whole lot more to be done with them, and there's a lot being done with them now. You look at the slope soaring guys in California.
Well, it's awesome.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So there's all of that. But for me, it'll be a male Harris hawk, just because here in Southeast Louisiana, it is the most versatile thing that we could fly. Mm-hmm. It does catch what we have here, and I like them. I enjoy them, and I stopped flying kestrels when my children were born because my wife was not too keen about having a hawk in the house, and kestrels, of course, an indoor bird. And so from that moment on, there was a male Harris hawk in the backyard or not. And while I'd had them before, I had never really felt like, well, this was the bird I got. And this bird has to do everything now, because now I don't have kestrels now. So it's got to be my bird hunter. It's, and I had experiences with sharpshin briefly, Cooper's hawk. I guess in the end, it was a disaster. In the middle, it was certainly successful, although not a whole lot of fun. And a male Harris hawk catches exactly the same quarry, exactly the same species, under the same circumstances, in the same distance. There is no difference. Plus, big swamp rabbits, plus jackrabbits, plus, hunting with your dog, plus hunting with other hawks, plus
the occasional real
plus the
rarity.
Occasional, right. But just like there's no comparison there. So for me, again, to start another war with the accipiter people.
I have that war every weekend of every pretty much every week of every hunting season. Pretty much.
And I think if you're not an advocate for the type of hawk that you really love, you're not a good falconer. You got to be able to go to war with somebody.
All that being said, deep down inside, everybody usually acknowledges all the said facts or whatever, but at the same time, you can't avoid having your fun digs at each other either.
No, that's all. It's all part of it. That's all. It's all fun, and I think that's not a point that should be lost. Is that whatever you do, whatever you choose, you should be having fun.
Yeah, if you're not having fun, there's no point in doing it.
There's no point in doing it, and that there's something to be said for challenging yourself. There's something to be said for doing something that you haven't done or something that to be difficult. But at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy doing that, if you're not successful at it by your own definition, at least,
no point.
There's no point.
Yeah,
there's no point.
What's the next thing that you were discussing as far as, obviously you've written your main book, American Kestrels and Modern Falconry and stuff. What's what's kind of the next endeavor you want to, or do you even want to have a quote unquote next endeavor with a book? Do you feel like there's more that you have to share with people?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I hope the answer is yes. As a blanket statement, and I do think there's another book. It'd be a short one probably, as I'm thinking of it now. But there are a lot of good short falconry books. Some of my favorites are little thin volumes. But the one I have in mind, if the Kestrel book was sort of a how-to, and the journal was more of a introspective look at why I do what I do here and how it affects my family, et cetera. This one would be sort of the guidebook to what I think of as like the 5 or 6 major categories of import in falconry, like the things that you have to think about, and these are like weight control. It's abundance of game. It's it's the right hawk for the right place. I'm sure we could have this discussion and we could have an argument with 100 falconers and have 500 different, lists of what those elements of falconry are. But,
sure.
But for me, if a person calls and they start telling me their story about, hey, this hawk and it does this and it doesn't quite do this, and I think that it's not quite doing this, I'm already thinking about, I've already narrowed my answer down.
Like there's number 3.
Yes, right.
There's number 5.
It's not infinite. It's just not infinite, and it will be one of those things. And so, so sort of wrapped up in that, in my head at least, are this not large number of elements of falconry, whatever those are, that are going to be universal across any type of hawking that you want to do if you want it to be successful. And then a definition of success, which would be the sort of the key to this book, would be, how do you define success? And you would think that every falconry book is about, in some way, successful falconry. And that is, if you've read more than 2 falconry books, that's not the case. The vast majority of efforts that we make as falconers to sort of relate what we do in falconry ends up being, sort of a broad-based look at what types of hawks there are, and sort of a, mansplaining version of what you do with them, and then maybe a literature review.
So in other words, you've already touched on the instruction, and then you've also already touched on the introspection. Now you're kind of wanting to share more philosophy. In other words, or just a different point of view on philosophy.
Yes, there'd be some, like philosophical aspect, not to elevate, the idea as some, thing that now I can't write because I'm not capable of writing it.
Yeah.
But it would be more of a universalist approach. In other words, falconry isn't, like I say, it's not rocket science, although there are rocket scientists who do it, and you can apply rocket science to it. And we got a lot of examples of that today. But there are elemental principles that will apply to all types of falconry, and if your goal is successful falconry, if your goal is to catch something with that hawk, whatever it is, wherever you are, whoever you are, then those are about 5. There's about 5 or 6 things you need to think about, and we don't write them down. Mm-hmm. And so it would be a little bit of me thinking about how I answer those questions and how I ask those questions of myself when I'm having trouble with a hawk, when I can't figure something out. Well, it's it is not some crazy answer out of the blue. It is one of very few elements of falconry that are applying, or I'm not applying correctly, or I'm not meeting the standard for, and it's really just sort of a practical application of are you a practical person? Do you know that you need a lot of game to catch game?
Right.
These are sort of the fundamental boil it down to what's the real problem.
Yeah.
And the real problem might be you don't have enough game.
Yeah.
Real problem, you don't have enough slips.
Right.
You don't know how to hunt. Right.
Yeah. Right kind of bird for that quarry.
Right.
And
right. And why? And then of course you can make a longer book out of that. But if my standard is a phone call, if my standard is what do I tell a guy who's calling me and I don't know him and he doesn't know me, but I know that problem that he has, and I think I could fix it, and I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's a pretty simple problem that he's overlooking. Yeah. So there's that. But in this bigger idea of the philosophical part of it, I think would qualify as a good philosophical consideration is, what is success? Is like, how do you define success? And
yeah, it's just like, the person that hasn't ever caught anything, hasn't flown a bird, is just trying to get that apprenticeship. Their version of success might be, I just want to catch one head of game. And before that, it might just even be like, I just want to be able to successfully get this bird to come back to me. Or it might be, might, for some people, it might be, it might change,
Well, so and you should move the goalpost, right? Yeah, you should, sure. as you should move. And this is not, setting up some elaborate excuse for falconers who don't want to succeed, right? Like the goal of this pursuit would not be to define success in such a way that it has no meaning. Right. That, like any answer is true. No, in fact, it's exactly the opposite. I've got sort of a system that I apply to my own falconry, whether I'm flying a kestrel or hare's hawk or Cooper's hawk or a red tail, that allows me to compare, one bird to another, one season to another, one quarry to another, where I can say, hey, look, was I successful at this? Am I doing it right? Like, am I meeting some minimal standard?
Or you can look at it and say, it just didn't seem right.
It didn't seem right. And then I start to, deconstruct that. Well, which of the 5 or 6 problems was I having with that bird? Of course, now, the more experience in falconry you get, you have more success, not just because you get that much better at it, because you avoid things that don't work. And so a guy who's been around for a long time can really look good just by avoiding a bunch of the mistakes that that he's made.
Yep.
And so I definitely see that as a benefit of being around for a while.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got that poor apprentice that's the first time free flying their bird ever in front of about, 5 or 6 experienced falconers who they know as soon as they go off it, they're going to have to retrap their fat bird and stuff. And they know that those 5 or 6, totally non-judgmental falconers are talking about all their theories as to why the bird flew up.
Yeah. And then there's the experienced falconer has the same experience, and then his buddies are still talking about him. And we've all been there too. Yeah.
So true. Well, I really appreciate you having me down this weekend. It was fun hanging with you and the Colsons and
eating your first crawfish.
My first crawfish. Yeah, crawfish is delicious.
There you go.
Yeah, crawfish boy.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, legit. The legit New Orleans crawfish boy. Yeah. Man, it's awesome. But I appreciate the hospitality and for taking the time and stuff. And I'm sure that everybody listening is as well. So, anything that you want to just kind of tease or give people a heads up about? There was a little birdie that was whispering something in my ear about the possibility of a new book edition coming out sometime soon or something like that.
Yeah. So we're always looking to re-release the Kestrel book. It gets reprinted on a regular basis, which I'm happy to say and proud of and glad for. And I think that that expansion of that is necessary at this point. And so I think the little bird is right. I think we need to expand the format a little bit. We need to bring in some people to help and sort of bring it up to date, because I think and I reread it a little while ago, and it for what it is, it's short and
short, sweet, and to the point.
Yes, and it still holds true. But there's more. There's more. Falconers are doing more now than I ever did. They're thinking about things that I wasn't thinking about, that I couldn't have even imagined, and so a lot of that needs to be brought in. And I look forward to doing that. Maybe we'll work together on that.
Cool, that'd be awesome, man. Anything I can ever be a part of to help you out and everything, just let me know. And like I said, man, thanks again so much. And
you bet. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully we'll do it again. Yeah, for sure.
All right,
I'm sure we will. Thanks, man. All right, thank you guys so much for listening this week, and I hope you enjoyed it. I had a great time making it for you, and am greatly appreciative to Matt Mullenix for taking the time for me and for showing all the hospitality. And as always, thank you again so much to the Falconry Fund for making the podcast possible. If you have any donations that you want to make, just please go to falconryfund.org. Any donations are always greatly appreciated because they go a long way towards future endeavors and for making future content for you all. Please subscribe if you haven't already, to our social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And if you ever need to contact us or have any questions, comments, recommendations for guests, just reach us at www.falconryfund.org/contact. Or you can always reach us by email at falconryfund@gmail.com and just mention podcast in the subject line. Once again, I am John Munier. Thank you so much for tuning in again this week. And don't forget to tune in next week because we definitely have lots of cool new guests lined up here for the near future. So everyone be safe until next time. Happy molting. And until then, take care. Thank you so much.